tribulation. Since as such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people, Israel, shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. Okay, so we have a resurrection principle, but the Sadducees are like, that's in Daniel. Some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars. How long? Forever and ever. So I mean, the Sadducees, again, they won't go outside of Genesis to Deuteronomy. And the rest of them, I mean, the Pharisees would be like, well, what about this passage? Sadducees would be like, nope. Right? But we also know some different positions that way. So it's obedience for the inheritance. Okay? And we also know that Christ will judge and deal with sin in humanity. So I think I'm just going to park. Let's just go back to Matthew 22. And we'll try and wrap this up. Some very good observations.
I think the thing that's interesting to me, like, this is kind of a teaching tool too, where you're sitting there and they tell this huge roundabout the Jake Griffith's barn thing. And you have to sit back and go, okay, so what are they really asking about here?
Yeah, and that's all I'm asking is...
And you get that from your students, or you get that from people where they're like, I was like, okay, let's boil this down to what you really want to know.
Yeah. So I mean, us as men put the kippah on, right? And the women put your shawls on and whatever else their Jewish custom. But what is being asked here? So I just asked the center there, is this about marriage and making babies?
Yeah. Nope.
Because I mean, me as a white Gentile, I'm like, yeah, this is all about whether we have sex in the kingdom. You know, whether, or maybe that was just me growing up, I don't know. I'm like, what?
No, I've heard.
Okay. But I mean, is this about sexuality?
Yeah.
I'll be open and honest, and I've said it before. If I'm receiving a glorified body that's not tainted by sin, and I'm going to be able to see and taste and smell and physically in all areas, including the sexual side of it, be at prime for the rest of my life, and then God say, you're not going to use any of that. You don't even need to eat. You know, that doesn't make sense to me as we work through them. So, is this about marriage and making babies, or the Jewish place and inheritance position in the Messianic kingdom? Are they worried about, or mockingly, who's going to look after the woman? Who's going to be her head? Because Jewish customs, right, the headship aspect. Land, how are they going to structure the home? Who's going to break the bread? Aspects to that. So, I would be perfectly content leaving it at that, as long as we get an application. And then you all can go home and chew on that and then decide whether you're going to burn me at the stake or... But now again, we won't start a church on this. This is how I get it. But I mean, it's definitely things to consider.
I don't know how your brain thinks like that.
I'm not normal. But that's also what makes reading and learning fun as well.
That's what makes us all different.
Yep.
Can't
I
all
was
be the
that
same.
child growing up. But
Well, it is interesting that Jesus didn't have to eat, but he did eat when he had his glorified body.
yeah, no, I got a
So
great
it's
big
like,
study, Ruth, if you want.
Well, no, I said-
I read through quite a
the
few
whole
of the
picture
early
of it,
church
yeah.
fathers on it, and that was like even in the first 300 years, they had some very good conversations about it. So just
Did we get a definition for levirate?
lever it,
Yeah.
other than it's God's provision for
Because I'm
the
thinking
name.
Levites, but
No, it's a levirate. So it's God's structure or God's provision for the name to continue.
Oh, it says nothing to do with it.
I don't think it has anything to do with Levite.
I know, that's what I'm kinda doing, I don't really ever ask myself the question.
It's the same
what
as when
definition
you-
of that word was.
When you learn about the Nazarites and the vows, men and women took that vow. It wasn't just men in that situation. So an application, I know where I would go. My application would be, I need to be careful, because some people can hold the scriptures and still be out to lunch, right? Or approach with a wrong motive. So I need to be careful and wise during that thing. Yeah. Jesus does a good job at channeling that and directing them back to the source.
Okay, so lever means husband's brother.
What?
The first part of that L-E-V-I-R means husband's brother.
Oh, so like brother-in-law marriage.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna be honest with you, I picked up a book that Dr. Doherty gave me the other day about Hebrew, just to look at the original language, how to start studying it. I don't want to go down that realm. Logos is good enough for me, there's like 7 different tenses in it. Somebody else wanna take a go at the application? How about I need to not take it for granted that I believe in the resurrection and I have that hope. That's something that I was groomed in from the very beginning, right?
I need to be better at answering the actual question instead of being led around.
Okay.
Sometimes.
That was, part of that's why I said that, I was like,
Yeah.
this is kind of incredibly
Getting to
wise.
the core
where
of it.
You get this crazy off-the-wall story and, oh,
Let's not
Well,
chase
that
all the
wasn't what they were really
little
asking.
pieces, let's just go right to the middle one.
That's where I come in and I say, write it down. But we also have a culture, we all live in a culture where people are just making up their own biblical truths, and this is what I think, and I'd like to think that some of those Sadducees found their way into the assembly after the death, burial, resurrection of Christ. And, when the 3 hours of darkness came through, how do you explain that if you don't believe in the spiritual realm? Right, or the graves open, right, and resurrected dead walking through Jerusalem. How do you explain that, Sadducees? I'd like to think that some of them would come to that place of just going, I believe.
you could actually understand why the Sadducees would be so focused on that, because it's all about having my pleasure now, because there's nothing later.
Well, I'm going to say not necessarily in the Jewish culture. I think they were just maybe a little cantankerous. I think they were still.
A little
Well, I mean, how could you?
A whole lot cantankerous, yeah.
How could you even want to live in complete obedience and strict observance of the law and not get anything for it? It doesn't make sense to me, right? Anyway, how many rebellious sons of the Sadducees just walked away? I'm out, not interested.
They just like to debate, is what you're saying.
There's probably that element too. Then we could get into all the man-made laws, the Mishnah and the Talmud and all the things that they were creating. We gotta be done.
Well, I think there's future and hope for these folks, because, these brothers, if Jay Byrne was right in his analogy, there's a hope there, because in the resurrection, if they believe that, then they knew that, hey, I don't have to be with this woman for eternity. There you go. If they didn't like her.
Yeah, that's true. Now, at the same time, we're careful because it is an illustration. But
No. I'm just joking.
no. But, and I mean, even just realizing God's desire for the family unit. Right? The idea of a widow being looked after, it was structured right into their life. Right? Children and widows were looked after.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears. Those wheels are turning.
The sandal thing, just a thought on that. So, the importance of, or the reason for removing the sandal would be, the guy can't get away
It's
when
a
you
way
go to spit
they
in his
made
face.
oaths.
Just that one thing.
What's that?
It was part of their oath making in the day. And yeah, it had to do with the fact that most people had one pair of sandals,
Right.
so
Nowadays, it's
taking
Crocs.
quite a valuable, it'd be like taking 2 of your tires off your vehicle.
Here
Like,
you go.
get to work
Now-
that way, Neil.
Now, I'm gonna try and trigger your brain, because I think the last time, I think you were studying through Ruth,
Yeah,
right? Was there not a politician, was it the White House where this happened, where one of the Arabs? I said
yeah,
it right.
Khrushchev took off his shoe, was it Khrushchev? Or Gorbachev? Maybe it was Gorbachev, took off his shoe and threw it at
Yes, that's right.
Reagan?
Someone, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That's a long time ago.
yeah.
But
Can't remember
that,
if it was Gorbachev
but
or.
that cultural taking off your shoe
Yeah.
and spitting the whole 9 yards,
Yeah. Yeah.
that grows out of that culture.
But see, in Papua New Guinea, the way you're sitting right now, with your feet up like that,
Grotesque.
is you've basically dishonored everybody sitting around the table. There's something about
'Cause
that
your
whole.
foot-
The bottom of the
Yeah,
feet,
yeah. It's just
Yeah,
interesting
you
how.
go
Some
down to
places, if you do
Bolivia, and
this,
if somebody comes up and shakes
then-
shakes your hand, or tries to shake your hand with the left hand,
Yeah.
means they just went to the bathroom, they didn't have TP,
Mm.
right? Because they use the right hand.
And that's Africa too.
Wow, imagine it's any third world country.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that before.
Or they come up and bump elbows.
disgusting.
All the different
Or
things to think about,
shakes.
yeah. That's the one you're gonna remember for
I
today.
was looking
Going
at the
downhill.
expression on your wife's face. I just thought it was real wow, it's like,
Oh,
it's gross.
oh,
I wasn't,
oh
I'm like,
dear. Yeah.
Okay,